I'm going to start by introducing the panelists on this panel. Hopefully, I'll get your titles and your names correctly. So apologies if I don't, and please correct me. We have Monsieur Mohamed Abakar, Defense Assistant of G5 Sahel.
Hi.
Colonel James Collado, International Military Affairs Branch Chief of US Army Africa and Southern European Task Force. Mr. Bruno Mpondo Epo, Director of Political Affairs of UN Multi-Dimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission in Mali. Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us on this discussion. My name is Frederic Maio. I am a program manager for the GICHD, which stands for the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining. We are based in Geneva. We work towards reducing risks to communities across the world stemming from explosive ordnance, with a particular focus on landmines, cluster munitions, other explosive remnants of war, and more recently on ammunition storages. At the GICHD, we have recently created a division called the Ammunition Management Advisory Team, AMAT, which is the division I work for. And just wanted to mention why we think that AMAT is relevant to this discussion, to this panel, based on what we do. So, as a result of inadequate stockpile management practices in some countries, substantial amounts of ammunition find their way to illicit markets. Theft, corruption, pilferage, resale. In many cases, diversion from ammunition stockpiles has intensified conflict, prolonged armed conflict, prolonged violence, and in some cases, we have anecdotal evidence emerging more and more that some of these ammunition that are diverted from national stockpiles are used in the manufacturing of IEDs by illicit groups and terrorist groups. So all these developments have underlined the relevance of safe and secure management of conventional ammunition. That is what we are working towards. We work with states to look at their policies and practices that they have in place and develop their capabilities to better manage and better secure and make their ammunition depots safer. So I'm very pleased to be on chairing this panel on counterterrorism and solidarity in the Sahel. Unfortunately, intercommunal violence and persistent attacks by extremists continue to undermine peace and security across the region. In the last year, the UN recorded over 4,000 deaths in the Sahel region, with Mali, Niger, Chad, and Burkina Faso being the most. Despite intense efforts by the countries concerned, international organizations and regional organizations in the region, direction to peace remains unclear, and solutions to what is described by the UN at the moment, extremely volatile situation. We have today, as I introduced the panelists, representatives from organizations that are working tirelessly and determined to finding solutions to the conflict affecting the region. I really look forward to the discussion and to hearing from your experience, what methods, mechanisms are currently being put in place to tackle the problem. If I can ask the panelists to now briefly introduce yourself, starting with Monsieur Mohamed Abakar.
Bonjour, Monsieur Frederic. Bonjour, chers panélistes. Unlikely, I prefer to speak in French because here French is my work language. and I will comfortable speaking French. Je suis le chef de bataillon Mohamed Abakar Mohamed. Je suis assistant de défense au Bureau de défense et sécurité du secrétariat exécutif du G5 Sahel, basé ici à Nouakchott. Merci.
Colonel James Collado.
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Colonel James Collado. I am the International Military Affairs Branch Chief at U.S. Army Africa in a division that we call the Security Cooperation Directorate, and I am based out of Vicenza, Italy.
Thank you. Welcome. Monsieur Bruno Mbopo.
Oui, bonjour, chers amis et collègues. Je suis Bruno Mbopo, directeur des affaires politiques, de l'administration et conseiller spécial du représentant spécial du secrétaire général. Heureux de participer à ce panel, and maybe I will switch to English because I've understood everybody. English is the main language of the meeting. So I'm Bruno Mbopo, I'm Director of Political Affairs, as already mentioned. Pleasure to meet all of you.
Thank you very much for those presentations. But no, it's great to have you here and have a diverse group of experts and expert organizations. And maybe if I can start with you, Colonel, on some questions to start the discussion. With the first question on how would you say the United States military working within the Sahel region? What is the U.S. military doing to counter terrorists?
Thank you very much for the question. I guess I would lead off by, even though I am in the Army, I would caution that I don't think there are really any military solutions to the conflict in the Sahel. However, that said, the United States military, we do a lot of training with multiple countries within the Sahel and outside, especially with troop contributing countries such as Senegal and Ghana. You get into specifics, a lot of our focus areas, at least from an Army component, which I can speak fully about, has been focused on counter IED, so improvised explosive devices, which has been a definite threat within the region. And we have also worked with partners on logistics training, engineering, and so forth. And those are usually, short-term training efforts. We have lots of other programs, such as the International Military Education and Training, which is funded by the Department of State, but that sends many of our partner nations, their officers, to some of our military schools back in the United States, and is a more long-term solution as far as building institutional capacity within our partners that we work with. And then one of the other areas, obviously, that we work with partners, not just Sahel partners, but others such as Europeans, the French, the British, has mainly been in trying to deconflict our efforts and ensure that, for example, the French aren't providing infantry training, followed by the US providing infantry training, followed by the British, so on and so forth. And instead, taking a more multilateral approach and working with partners as necessary to help build their capacity. So that's a very quick rundown.
Thank you very much. Could you maybe elaborate for us on the role of the US military's Security Force Assistance Brigade in Africa?
Thank you. That's a great question. I'll start back with, in the past, how we've done training, as a U.S. Army has generally involved bringing in units from the States to conduct training, partnering. However, one of the issues that we've ran into doing that is a lot of times we don't get the right types of trainers or the right rank or grade, if you will. And so a few years ago, the United States Army created what is now called the Security Force Assistance Brigade. And these are units that are specifically trained to be advisors and work with partners and come with very specific niche capabilities that allow them to be more of a overall force provider. And also, instead of, in the past where a lot of times we've conducted kind of one-off trainings, the SFAB is more capable of focusing on long-term institutional capacity and, more of the train the trainer, with the overall goal of, working ourselves out of a job. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That sounds really interesting, and definitely making institutions stronger by ongoing training and development, and moving towards better governance of the actual capabilities is definitely something. With the military support that you're also providing or training in the military, is also something that I think would be a solution. Maybe if I can open the floor to the panelists, if anybody wants to add to what Colonel James Collado just mentioned. It was interesting to note that your opening statement was that the solution will not only be a military solution. However, clearly it is part of it. Maybe someone else want to comment on this?
Okay, indeed, it's interesting to realize that there is no military solutions to combating terrorism in Sahel. But in the meantime, if we look at the international cooperation, the EU or the US, they have a lot of training, and the training is mainly military training. So I think moving forward, I think we will have to adjust such an approach for it not to be only training on military aspect, but we have some other aspect that we need to take into account when addressing counterterrorism in the region. We will come back to that. I just wanted to highlight that even though I fully agree that military solution is not the solution to the issue of terrorism in the Sahel, what we are having in the field on a daily basis, it's mainly that the majority of the cooperation is military oriented, which suggests that so far we are still looking at it from the perspective of military. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think it goes back to what was mentioned, Colonel, about you stating that it's not only a military solution, but it is part of it. And with what you mentioned of the Security Force Assistance Brigade becoming more long-term, opposed to just a one-off ad hoc military training, actually looking at institutional building and looking at governance on top of everything else. I think that reflects your opening statement of going beyond just this military solution. Thank you. Maybe just to keep with Bruno from the UN. Where do you think the United Nations stands on counterterrorism in the Sahel region?
Maybe to start with, we are not involved in combating terrorism as such. As MINUSMA. In the meantime, in the region, our reading of the situation suggests that as the UN, we need to address globally the root causes of terrorism, but we also need to address the approach by terrorist organizations. Let me put it this way. What we are realizing, what we are assessing on the ground is that terrorist organizations have three objectives in the Sahel region. The first one is a political objective. And that political objective is very damaging. That is the reason why we are observing inter-community clashes in Mali, in Burkina Faso, all the way through Nigeria. The political objective of terrorist organizations is to take advantage of inter-community differences to encourage inter-community confrontation. We've seen it in central Mali, where we are having issues between Pearl and Dogon. We are having it in Burkina Faso, where we have a confrontation between Christians and Muslims. We have the same issue in Nigeria. This is one of the objectives of a terrorist organization. The second one is the military objective. The military objective is to make sure that they control a large part of territory in the global Sahel region. That's why today you have insecurity, you have terrorist attacks, not only in the Sahel, but even beyond the Sahel. You have terrorist attacks, you have had terrorist attack in Côte d'Ivoire, you have it in Benin. The next targets Togo and Ghana. This is with one objective, to make sure that we have portion of the territory under control. We've seen the same with Boko Haram in Chad, Cameroon, and Nigeria, and which suggests that the military objective of this terrorist organization is clear. And the third objective is economic aspect. On the economic aspect, as you all may be aware, the Sahel, according to some figures, is about $35 billion a year that people can make out of transnational organized crime, particularly drug trafficking, illegal migration, cigarettes, arms smuggling, and stuff like that. And this is one of the sources of funding for terrorist activities. So our observation is that on one hand, we are having terrorist activities with three objectives, but yet what we are doing, we are focusing only on one objective, that is the military. So as a UN, we tried to look at this in a broad way, which is prepare a United Nations integrated strategy for the Sahel. And that strategy aimed at aligning the economic aspects, that is combating poverty, humanitarian, together with the political aspect of it, that is trying to promote reconciliation between community, intra and inter-community reconciliations, while others, like the G5 Sahel, like Barkhane, like the multinational force against Boko Haram, are moving forward with the military option. This is the way the UN is approaching the issue of terrorism. As far as MINUSMA itself is concerned, we have very limited impact on combating terrorism, because all what we are doing is to share information. Sharing intelligence particularly, but also with the G5 Sahel, we participate in some of the planning exercise, but we are not part of the confrontation in the field. So this is the way we are looking at the issue of terrorism. We will come back later on, if you allow me, on the aspect of the efficiency of what is being done so far in the Greater Sahel region. Over.
Thank you very much, Bruno, for your input there, and a very good overview of what the United Nations does to counter terrorism and address the root cause, and multifaceted issues that lead up to and contribute to terrorism in the Sahel. Maybe if we can go through to the representative of the G5 Sahel, Monsieur Abakar, to continue this discussion, and Bruno mentioned that there's a lot of contribution between the UN and the G5. Can you maybe tell us what mechanisms the G5 Sahel have put in place to fight terrorism?
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Frederic. Merci pour les panélistes qui m'ont précédé. Avant, j'ai voulu poser une question juste d'éclaircissement à Monsieur Epo, qui avait si vraiment résumé les causes profondes du terrorisme, mais je peux revenir ultérieurement là-dessus. Donc, permettez-moi de le rappeler de manière vraiment brève. La particularité du G5 Sahel, le G5 Sahel initialement est une organisation créée pour le développement, uniquement pour le développement. Mais la conjoncture sécuritaire était de telle sorte que l'aspect sécuritaire est venu se greffer là-dessus. C'est pourquoi maintenant on parle de développement et sécurité. Et de manière concrète, les gens ne voient pas du tout l'aspect développement. C'est toujours l'aspect sécuritaire, l'aspect sécuritaire, l'aspect sécuritaire. Parce que c'est les circonstances qui ont voulu. Ceci, je voudrais aller très rapidement à ce que le G5 fait à travers ses structures, ses démembrements, pour pouvoir faire face à ce qui c'est que la lutte contre le terrorisme. Certes, des stratégies sont développées, des mécanismes sont là, les approches sont là, parfois élaborés par le G5 Sahel, parfois élaborés avec l'appui des partenaires. Mais ce que je voudrais mettre en exergue ici, c'est le travail que fait la force conjointe. La force conjointe, qui a un volume d'à peu près de 5000 hommes, c'est une force qui est là, qui a pour mandat de combattre le terrorisme sur le terrain. Contrairement à l'aménagement, la force du G5 Sahel a ses mandats, d'ailleurs attribués par l'UIA, de combattre sur le terrain le terrorisme. Et maintenant, il a été constaté que déployer les troupes sur le terrain pour combattre, ce n'est pas suffisant. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire pour accompagner l'efficacité de notre combat contre le terrorisme? C'est en ce sens que les gens ont pensé au volet renseignement et formation. Parlant de la formation, par exemple, il a été décidé de créer une structure de formation, par exemple le collège de défense du G5 Sahel, où on peut former des officiers de haut niveau de différentes armées qui puissent comprendre, planifier et comment demain coordonner les actions sur le terrain. Maintenant, d'ailleurs, le collège est à sa 3e formation qui est déjà en cours, qui commencera dans bientôt. Ça, c'est le premier aspect de la formation. C'est comment avoir, au niveau sous-régional, des officiers qui puissent travailler, coordonner et exercer dans des fuseaux communs ou bien dans des états-majors communs, que ce soit les états-majors des fuseaux, que ce soit un état-major central. Et en plus de ça, nous avons une académie régionale de police pour s'occuper de tout ce qui est volet sécurité intérieure. Et ici, aujourd'hui, comme l'a mentionné M. Epo, si on parle par exemple de l'aspect économique qu'il a évoqué, il y a le banditisme qui va avec, il y a le commerce illicite qui va avec, il y a le trafic transfrontalier aussi qui va avec, ainsi de suite. Mais pour faire face à cet aspect-là, il faut qu'on ait un système sécuritaire, c'est-à-dire de sécurité intérieure, qui puisse comprendre également les enjeux et prendre cela en compte. Mais on n'a pas arrêté ce processus de formation. Les chefs d'État, dernièrement, ils ont dit non, il nous faut un centre qui puisse nous appuyer en termes de renseignement de manière régionale. Similaire à notre RIFU, le Regional Intelligence Fusion Unit basé à Abuja qui appuie la FMM par exemple, nous on a dit qu'il faut qu'il y ait un centre similaire pour appuyer la force conjointe en termes d'autonomie et en termes de renseignement vraiment exploitable. Donc nous avons le centre de fusion de renseignement qui sera basé bientôt à Niamey. Mais ce qui est là, de manière concrète, la force est en train de planifier ses opérations, de conduire ses opérations. Et une force, quand elle est déployée quelque part, absolument, elle fait vraiment ce qu'on appelle les actions civilo-militaires avec les ressources maigres pour bénéficier de la confiance de la population. Et elle évolue toujours sur cette lancée-là avec l'appui des partenaires, plus précisément MINISMA au Mali dans le fuseau-centre et la force Barkhane, surtout depuis qu'on a lancé le mécanisme conjoint qui a lancé l'opération dans le fuseau-centre. C'est là où on a senti vraiment l'efficacité de cette lutte contre le terrorisme. Parce qu'on a des forces diverses qui coordonnent, qui planifient, qui évoluent ensemble. Comme je le disais tantôt, ça c'est le processus ou bien le mécanisme que le G5 essaye de concrétiser afin de faire face d'une manière ou d'une autre à ces défis de lutte contre le terrorisme. Nous avons dit la formation, nous avons dit les renseignements et le côté opérationnel sur le terrain. En plus de ça, nous avons mis en place une cellule de prévention de la radicalisation et de lutte contre l'extrémisme violent. C'est une cellule de prévention de la radicalisation et de l'extrémisme violent. Donc, pour être auprès des communautés, pour savoir qu'est-ce qui ne va pas entre les communautés et nos forces de défense, comment avoir une idée précise sur l'enrôlement des jeunes, sur ce qui ne va pas sur le terrain, grâce à la collection des données sur le terrain, et comment accompagner nos États, comment accompagner les administrations locales pour pouvoir faire face à ces défis de la radicalisation. Ça, c'est un aspect que la cellule prend en compte et on travaille là-dessus. Donc, je ne voudrais pas entrer en ce qui concerne, je ne voudrais pas entamer les défis auxquels on fait face, je ne voudrais pas entamer cela, si vous me permettez de revenir ultérieurement là-dessus. Mais en termes de mécanismes, ça c'est qu'on a mis en place, et d'ailleurs ce qui est évolutif, et avec l'accompagnement des partenaires pour la mise en œuvre. Merci Frédéric.
Maybe if I can open the floor now, some comments on what's been said. If you want to add to the discussion.
Okay, if I may.
Please.
Again, we are all aware that MINUSMA is the deadliest peace operation in the world. We are losing a lot of people. And this is not because of our activities. But we, as we move on towards the implementation of peace agreement, stabilization, providing humanitarian assistance, we are also in the middle of counterterrorism activities in the region. Indeed, there seem to be, we have a lot of structures that are there to help combating terrorism. As we said, we have the G5 Sahel, we have Barkhane, we also have national institutions, defense and security. On the other hand, to take into account other objectives of terrorist organizations, as we said, we have something like 19 strategies for Sahel, bringing together security and economic and political aspects. We have almost 19 strategies. But our observation is that all those strategies lack coordination. Our colleague from the G5 Sahel mentioned the presence of institutions to prevent radical extremism. But the work is not done at the regional level. That strategy or the activities, most of the activities are done at national level. If we look at the Sahel strategies, be it from the UN, from the EU, from the US and others, they lack coordination. This suggests that at the level of the political and economic aspect of the issue we are facing with, we are lacking coordination. So the efficiency is very limited. And it is not only coordination, sometimes it is also an issue of funding, where most of the country prefers bilateral rather than multilateral cooperation. Now, when it comes to confrontation with terrorist organizations in the field, there as well, we are the victims that, as MINUSMA, we are victims of activities on the ground. The G5 Sahel is facing a lot of challenges. Indeed, that is an organization that is there to combat terrorism and also transnational organized crime. But if we look at all the sectors of operations of the G5 Sahel, we have very different results. In Sector West, for instance, while in the northern part of the sector, where we have a deployment of Mauritanian battalion, the security is more or less under control. In the southern part of that sector, that is in the Ouagadougou forest area, the presence of terrorist organization is increasing. If we move into central Mali, where we are having regular confrontation between Jenin and Islamic State, this is adding to insecurity with consequences on MINUSMA. If we move on to Sector East, where we have a deployment of Niger and Chad, we realize that they are doing a lot, but a lot to prevent transnational organized crime, as well as illegal immigration. And from time to time, there are confrontations with some armed groups. The bulk of the effort of the G5 is in the sector center, where we have Barkhane, we have Burkina Faso, we have Niger, we have Mali, and we also have the presence of MINUSMA, even though we are not participating in confrontation. Two factors have helped to stabilize that area. One is the rainy season. The rainy season that prevents the movement of not only traffickers, but also terrorist organizations. And the second is a lot of efforts that the G5 Sahel, National Army and Barkhane put to stabilize the area. And as a result of this, we are having insecurity going downward towards Côte d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso. This is just to mention that even if we take into account the G5 Sahel's efforts to combat terrorism, the efficiency remains very limited. Because the results are far better where we have national army, like in Mauritania, like in Niger, like in Chad. We still have a lot of problems as far as the defense and security forces of Mali are concerned. We have a lot of challenges on that because of the weakness. But almost the majority of the defense and security forces that are combating terrorism, I think they still need a lot of training. They still need training, they still need equipment. That is what is diminishing the efforts in combating terrorism. That is one challenge that they have to do. The other one is on sharing of intelligence. I think that is still an issue. Human intelligence remains a key factor to combat terrorism. But if we operate in areas where you don't have the states, then we are leaving the population in front of terrorist organizations. And terrorist organizations are the ones providing security to the population, providing humanitarian assistance to the population, thus preventing our national armies, including the G5 Sahel joint force, to gather intelligence. And how practical is this intelligence gathering shared? All those questions are there, and if we don't pay attention to those aspects, we might end up continuing addressing or combating terrorism, but always with very limited efforts and with very limited results, because we are focusing on one hand on military, and we have a lot of challenges on the military aspect. We are focusing less on the other aspect, political and transnational organized crime. So far, we have UNODC, but UNODC is not in the field. So the impact of UNODC is very limited. Those are the comments I wanted to make at this stage. Over.
Thank you very much for your input. A lot of interesting information here, and I think it's quite good to be able to continue talking about this. I just maybe want to give the floor to Colonel James Collado, and not throwing you any curveball here, but Bruno mentioned that training and equip is a big part of the intervention mechanisms, that it does produce results. There is a mention that it's probably not the only focus, is the only area that should be focused on, which is probably correct, but it's the moment of receiving a lot of attention. I guess that is part of what your response is in some of the contingent training, equipping. Clearly, it has an impact. From where you sit, from your point of view, it'd be interesting for you to say where else, other than training, equipping, focus should be put. Clearly not on your responsibility, but from where you are, where can you see that maybe there should be an investment in other aspects?
Hey, thanks for the question. So the first part regarding training and equipping, I will agree. It absolutely does make a difference. I can tell you, I previously served in Uganda at the U.S. Embassy, and we worked quite a bit with the UPDF on training their forces prior to deploying to Somalia. And it absolutely made a difference over the long term. And then the other thing I would note is that the issue, we face, from a U.S. perspective, from the Army, but also, our sister components, the Air Force, Marines. There's only so much money out there that's allotted to us. I can tell you almost every U.S. country team will ask for training and equipping cases for their partners that they work with. And ultimately, it has to be approved by Congress, and it has to go through a very, what I would call Byzantine and painful bureaucratic process for the United States, for the military. Then also get Department of State concurrence. And that is all just to say that, you know, hey, if it was up to me, yeah, I would be dropping equipment, training everywhere all the time. But it unfortunately does not work that way. But absolutely 100% training and equipping does have value. But, you know, there's also other issues that are also important. It depends on the partner. It depends on the will being there. And then actually being able to take the training, the equipment, and then actually being able to fully utilize it in the field. And that's, again, that's a long-term process. You know, just sorry to go back to Uganda, but I spent quite a while there. You know, we spent over 10 years training and equipping the UPDF for Somalia. And I mean, there was a dramatic improvement in the, you know, capabilities of the force, but that was a long sustained presence on the US side. So it absolutely does pays back and pays off in the long term. But that's just not always the way our government is able to prioritize training and equipping. And then to your other point, what other areas can we invest in? So I mentioned it earlier, which is our International Military Education and Training Program, where we send off officers to, you know, military training in the U.S., which is a wide range of training, education opportunities. It includes anything from doing an infantry basic course to going to National Defense University or to our Command and General Staff College for the Army. So the reason I highlight that is because I believe investing in people generally has longer term benefits than focusing on equipment and you know, short-term training. So those are just a few thoughts.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the question and for input there. I think it's good examples of what has been achieved and what value training can bring. Maybe if I go back to our colleague from G5 to answer a similar type question. It was mentioned that you know, training and equipping does make an impact. What other areas do you think is worth investing in? As Bruno suggested, that, you know, that we should look at this in a multi-dimensional way. Military training, equipment, but what else?
Merci, Monsieur Frédéric. C'est vrai, la formation est le fondamental. La formation est le fondamental. L'équipement aussi est indispensable. Mais comme l'a mentionné M. Epo précédemment dans son volet militaire, nos forces en général dans le Sahel n'étaient pas prédisposées ou bien entraînées pour combattre le terrorisme. Ça, c'est ce que je voudrais mettre en exergue. Mais maintenant, on dit tantôt, nos armées ont des doctrines qui ne prennent pas en compte ces combats asymétriques-là. Donc, c'est pourquoi j'ai voulu poser la question à EPO. Est-ce qu'il y a une stratégie quelque part pour accompagner les armées du Sahel afin d'adapter leurs doctrines respectives? Donc, si cela est fait, c'est là où on peut maintenant intégrer le volet formation pour plus d'efficacité. Quand on apporte une formation de manière ponctuelle et on répare, on ne sent pas vraiment l'efficacité de manière un peu globale ou bien régionale. Donc, au niveau national, si on prend une armée, on a dit que cette doctrine-là n'était pas adaptée dans la lutte contre le terrorisme. Maintenant, il faut apporter la doctrine qui va avec. Maintenant, pour cette doctrine-là, il faut tel volume, telle catégorie de formation, et ça doit être une formation continue à l'échelle des armées. Et comme ça, nos armées seront à un même degré de combat contre le terrorisme. D'accord? Maintenant, l'autre point que je voudrais apporter à M. Frederic, les armées ont besoin de la formation, ça certes. Mais si vous voulez appuyer les armées dans le cadre de cette formation, il ne faut pas oublier que dans cette lutte contre le terrorisme, là, on a la population. D'accord? Maintenant, est-ce que vous avez réfléchi pour pouvoir appuyer ou bien soutenir ces populations-là en termes de formation, dans la réussite ou bien dans la mise en œuvre de leurs petits projets à impact rapide? D'accord? Former les militaires, d'accord, il n'y a pas de problème. Maintenant, vous formez les militaires dans les baraques, vous les déployez sur le terrain. Ces militaires maintenant sont en contact de ces populations. Et le militaire, quand il est là sur le terrain, il accomplit sa mission, il continue. Même si je l'ai mentionné quelque part, on a les actions civilo-militaires qu'on fait de manière un peu ponctuelle. Maintenant, ces populations ont vraiment besoin d'une assistance pour leur prospérité. Mais ces populations ont besoin d'être formées. Comme l'administration publique n'existe pas, il faut quelqu'un qui puisse venir les former dans la réussite de ces projets à impact rapide quelque part. Est-ce que vous avez une telle initiative quelque part? Bon, cette deuxième question va à l'endroit de mon collègue de l'UN, pas à M. Epou. Et si vous me permettez, je voudrais vraiment enchaîner un peu. M. Epou a bien relevé les défis auxquels on fait face. Mais de facto, il faut qu'on comprenne que la force conjointe de G5 Sahel là, a des défis d'ordre opérationnel. Pour combattre, il faut la logistique. Si les ressources ne suivent pas, on n'aura pas de rendement. On planifie, on conduit une opération. Du moment où on sent déjà les résultats de cette opération, les ressources sont épuisées. Il faut rentrer dans les fuseaux, avoir les moyens pour venir encore conduire d'autres missions. Entre-temps, les terroristes, ils reviennent, ils occupent, si vous me permettez le terme, ils occupent de nouveau le théâtre. Et ça devient maintenant cyclique. Donc ça, c'est un des défis majeurs de la force conjointe du G5 Sahel. Comment avoir les ressources vraiment pérennes pour continuer les opérations. Si vous avez constaté tout dernièrement avec la mise en place de mécanismes conjoints avec l'appui de Barkhane et de MINUSMA, bon, certes, je le mentionne, MINUSMA n'intervient pas sur le terrain pour combattre, mais on a toujours eu l'appui opérationnel en termes de vaccins, en termes d'appui logistique. Maintenant, cette opération a donné de grands résultats. Donc, il faut que cette force ait la possibilité de conduire une telle mission similaire dans la même zone. Sinon, ça n'a aucun résultat. Vous connaissez l'espace sur lequel évoluent ces groupes terroristes. L'espace est grand et la force n'est pas en mesure de couvrir toute la région à la fois. Mais si elle a les ressources pour conduire les opérations, elle pourra faire le maximum pour au moins empêcher la liberté d'action et de mouvement des groupes terroristes. Ça, c'est le fondamental. Oui, oui Frédéric.
I thank you for that. I probably need to bring this to a close in a few minutes' time. Maybe if we can have one last round of interventions from our panelists. The floor is yours, just to take it when you like.
D'accord, d'accord. Bon, je disais tantôt, quand M. Epo a listé les causes profondes de ce que c'est que le terrorisme, surtout mentionnant le côté militaire, moi je me suis dit, est-ce que sur ce volet-là, il y a une initiative ou bien un projet d'initiative quelque part pour revoir les doctrines de nos armées dans le Sahel, afin de les adapter à cette guerre contre le terrorisme. Merci.
Now, you've heard our colleague from the US commenting on the number of years that it took to have solid military institutions in Uganda. And I think that the results of the Ugandan presence in Somalia, but not only in Somalia, give us an indication of what having a strong training can make as a difference. Now, on the particular question asked by our colleague from the G5 on the doctrine, I'm not sure that there is an institution that will train an army of another country on how to adopt or to adapt the doctrine or the way of doing business in the field. Our assessment, and that makes things a bit difficult in combating terrorism in the Sahel, is that we are dealing with three situations that are very complicated. First of all, we have national interest, which I refer to as the geopolitics of the Sahel, where even though we have 5 countries trying to come together to combat terrorism, I think those countries are combating terrorism with very different objectives. You've heard the dispute between Mali and Burkina Faso, when Burkina Faso came into Mali and when Mali went into Burkina Faso. You all know the limitations of Mauritania to allow the Malian army to come into Mauritania. Just because every country has its own strategies and policy in combating terrorism. And beyond the policies and strategies, we also have one key element that we should not forget, that is preventing or that is diminishing the efficiency of counterterrorism in the region. We have 2 countries that are not involved in the G5, but 2 countries that are extremely important in combating terrorism in the region, in the Sahel region, Algeria and Libya. And we all know that key actors in the terrorism are from the region, either from Algeria or from Tunisia or from Libya. If we don't have all those countries involved, at least at the level of intelligence, our efficiency on the ground will not be that effective. So that is something that we need to consider as national army or as G5 Sahel prior to elaborating strategies or preparing concept of operations. The second aspect that we need to consider is the weakness of our national security or justice, corrections, and governance aspect. Very weak. While we are trying to cut the sources of funding for terrorists in the Sahel region, it is difficult to realize that the flow of everything that goes through the Sahel has not diminished. We still have a lot of hashish coming from Morocco. We still have a lot of drug coming all the way from Sao Tome and Principe through Central Africa or through Western Africa, Guinea-Bissau, moving towards Libya and Central or Eastern Europe. We still have that. And all these roads are crossing countries. It is difficult to realize that people are hijacked in Benin, and they are crossing at least 2 countries just to come to Mali. Fortunately, we have a military intervention of the Americans or French, I don't know, who prevented those people from getting into Mali. It means that for those people to cross all those countries, there is a serious problem of sharing of information, and there is also a serious weakness of our national security. So if we don't take all this into consideration and we only focus on confronting terrorists on the ground, providing short-term training, where in other countries it took 10 years, in the Sahel region, it is usually 3 months, 6 weeks, and stuff like that. We will continue to face a lot of challenges in addressing terrorism in the Sahel region. This is the comment that I wanted to make on that last aspect. Over.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your input. Maybe I can go back to the last closing remarks from colleague at the G5. Mohamed, the floor is yours.
Bon, merci pour la clarification des uns et des autres. En fait, la lutte contre le terrorisme maintenant dans le Sahel nous met en face des défis très énormes à relever, que ce soit par les États, que ce soit de manière un peu régionale. Les défis sont énormes. Maintenant, nous, on dit qu'on a un mandat de combattre le terrorisme. Mais de l'autre côté, de la manière dont les armes légères circulent, du jour au lendemain, tout le monde devient combattant. Aujourd'hui, il est facile dans certaines régions du Sahel d'acquérir une arme légère que d'acquérir un bélier. Ça, c'est un défi auquel on fait vraiment face. Et l'autre point, comme l'a mentionné M. Epo, il faut reconnaître que les États sont faibles. Il faut reconnaître que les États sont tantôt absents. Et le militaire sur le terrain ne peut pas jouer ces 2 rôles. C'est ce côté-là que les gens n'arrivent pas à prendre en considération. Donc, le militaire fait son travail, mais il faut qu'il y ait la présence de l'État pour la suite. Tant que l'État n'est pas là, ou bien les structures sociales ou bien socio-économiques de base ne sont pas sur place, toujours le vide est là, toujours on favorise la voie libre au terrorisme. Donc c'est ça ce que je voudrais mentionner. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. This has been touched upon by all the panelists today, I think. Clearly, I think this discussion was very rich in terms of arriving to this conclusion and highlighting the importance of force and security forces to combat terrorism. But it was we've very quickly highlighted the need for other aspects to be touched upon to make sure we arrive at the results that we want, other than just security aspects. Thank you very much for taking part in this discussion. Thank you, Mohamed. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Colonel, to join in. I think there's some other themes during this symposium that are very similar to the ones or touch upon the ones that we've discussed right now. Personally, it was great to meet you, although we're doing it online. It was still very interesting, and I'm very happy to have met you. I'll probably come back to you individually. There'll probably be some more exchanges in French and in English between us. Thank you very much for your input and for this very good discussion. Thank you.